Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you, and today I want to talk with you guys a little bit about zero tolerance. I want to talk about what I thought of them, what they've done, how much I appreciate ZT, and I want to talk about my feelings right now and some of my frustration or maybe disappointment, and I'd love for you guys to weigh in as well. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I want to sort of give you some background here because I have had a ton of zero tolerance knives. I love zero tolerance knives. I am definitely a fan. Part of it, I think, is because when I first got into knives, ZT was sort of the end all and be all. It was the pinnacle of high end production. And really, back then, I didn't anticipate ever getting my hands on anything higher end than a ZT. I thought, that's all there is. And why would anyone ever need more? Now, since that time, I've gotten a few other knives, but still, high-end production is kind of my sweet spot. I don't really get into custom knives. I don't get into too many, pre-orders and limited runs and stuff like that. It's still high-end production where a lot of my attention lies. And I think that's a big part of that is the influence that zero tolerance had when I was first getting into this. I can remember watching the same videos over and over again on the 0300 and just drooling over it. I can remember when I first got the first ZT I had was a 0560, and in my mind, like I had arrived. That was it. This is the greatest knife that I would ever get to handle, and I actually owned it, and I was so excited. You have no idea. And look, I loved them, and I still kind of love them because they combined a really great heavy duty, ready for anything type of cutting tool with all the cool features and materials and manufacturing that I also really wanted. So those two things kind of coming together, Cold Steel, I love Cold Steel, and they make a lot of great knives, but they're not, the pride of ownership in a Cold Steel is different. It's more about utility, where the pride of ownership in a ZT, there are some other facets that really, really interested me there and got me really excited. And so, for all of those reasons, okay, uh, I have had this ongoing love affair with zero tolerance. And by the way, I want to shout out a couple of important individuals or institutions that had to do with this video. This is a knife you may recognize. I've reviewed it on the channel. The scales are by Sharp Dressed Knives, but all of the zero tolerance knives here, except the 0308, which belongs to me, these other three knives belong to Bradley, who lent them for the benefit of the channel. The 0308 was sent to me by White Mountain Knives for sort of promotion purposes. So that's a really, really great knife, and it's a really, really cool offer. So I want to really encourage you guys to continue your purchasing from White Mountain Knives, especially go and look for some ZTs over there. They do have some in stock as of the making of this video, and they generally have a few in stock. So Justin has been a huge help, an ongoing help to the channel. I've got some knives in the mail coming from him right now. And so gotta give credit where credit is due. So a huge thank you to White Mountain Knives, and I would encourage you guys to head over there. I know I've got other channel sponsors as well. We'll pay attention to them in other videos, but this one, Justin deserves some credit because the 308 is a fantastic knife. All right, now, as you know, from my initial interest in ZT, and probably all of ours, we're probably all attracted for similar reasons at the start. They made some significant changes. So it started out with the 03, well, this is the 303, but it started out with the 0300, a Ken Onion and Mick Strider collaboration. You really can see the influence of both of those individuals in this knife. And it's not only that, but it's a cool knife. It's a well-built knife. It's an enjoyable knife. I know Bradley really, really likes it, and so do I, because it was one of those knives that when we first got into this, we were so excited about, and I'm sure many of you can share that as well. But for good or ill, they definitely departed a bit from this style of knife fully, right? There, I can only imagine, what would the world be like if ZT just kept making stuff like this, right? If they never transitioned to smaller, lighter use, anyway, it would have been a very different experience. And over the years, like this knife is still pretty ZT-ish. Okay, it's big and beefy, and over the top, but they didn't they kind of departed a little bit from that to some degree. All right, I think part of it was the 0350 was very popular and sold a lot. I don't think there's a knife enthusiast out there without a 0350, and even people who are just casually interested, a lot of people have the 0350. That was a big seller, and I think that was like, hey, you know, we need to kind of pivot in this direction a little more. And certainly they have. There have been a lot of ZTs that are not quite as crazy overbuilt and big and beefy. And essentially now they just do nice high-end folders. And they still do a good job. It's just the original sort of tactical overbuilt kind of stuff. It didn't, I don't know, it's not gone, right? The 308 is still here for sure, but it's not as much of a priority for them. And I get it, right? I'm not complaining. And really they've done a lot of great stuff in addition to just this style. The other thing that I loved about ZT and kind of transitioned as they did, was that they would make these great collaborations. So stuff from Rexford and Dmitry Sinkovich, and of course Hinderer, like the 560, that was my first CT and still stands out in my mind. Les George, lots and lots of partnerships, and those partnerships have been really cool and really welcome. There's some great Rexford ZTs, some great Emerson ZTs. So, that has allowed many of us who would never, who are never going to own a Sinkovich custom or a Rexford custom or, any custom knife possibly, to own something that's very well put together that captures a lot of the qualities of those various custom designs and allows us to get our hands on them, right? ZTs, although again, I said accessible at the beginning, and I still think, they're not cheap, but if your dream would be to own a Les George, well, this isn't quite there, but man, it's close, and it's such a nice knife, right? And so that I think is another sort of service that's one of the things I love about ZT. But I would also say I think it's a really good service that they've sort of offered to the knife community. Now, listen, there have been some challenges along the way, and when I first got into ZT, when I was watching all those 0560 videos, it was the discussion was all about burned LMAX and detent issues. All right, now it's lock slip and spine wax, and they've kept going and they've kept doing a good job beyond that. I will say this: I don't think for ZT or any company that just having some quality control hiccups is like the end of the world, right? Benchmade, how long do we complain about that? Now they kind of moved past it. They've been doing a better job, and ZT as well has addressed a lot of those problems. So that's a great thing. And while there have been issues, they haven't been like the death knell or anything like that. All right, ZT has addressed that stuff. I will say this: there did always seem to be, or there has been, some tension between the knife community and Zero Tolerance, and I think that's because they took a particular approach. All right, they built knives like this and said, this is this tank of a knife. It's hard use, it's heavy duty, it can do anything. And people believed it. And when you use that kind of marketing, it's going to invite some testing, right? If you say we're the strongest, we're the toughest, somebody's going to go, oh yeah, let's see if that's true, and they're going to beat the crap out of this. And if something goes wrong, they're going to be angry and they're going to look at ZT and say, you told me this could take anything I could throw at it. And ZT's like, well, I didn't mean you could hit it with a sledgehammer, but they said, well, you said it and I did it, and now look, right? So I think that part of this sort of, what would you say, part of the discontent that has gone on between the knife world and Zero Tolerance is because they marketed themselves as being the toughest and best and strongest. I'm surprised Cold Steel didn't try to sue them. Although they did do some comparison testing, which didn't go well. And I would be really, really curious. You guys maybe recall that there was a Cold Steel comparison with the 0300 here. And anyway, knowing ZT, I wouldn't be surprised if lawyers were involved in some of that. And that brings me to the other part. ZT gets a really upset if you criticize them, right? Don't be going and saying bad stuff on their Instagram posts. Don't be complaining about them if you're a reviewer. You know, I'm a little nervous even making this video. There's a reviewer that I know that I talk to regularly that they sued. All right, so there's a little bit of ZT, you know, in terms of their relationship with the community, it's not always great. All right, and I don't, whatever, right? Take whatever approach you want. I do think they could use some help in the marketing department, especially with the last couple of marketing videos that they've had come out. Now, I suggest those videos are not marketed to the internet knife community. So we look at them and go, what? This is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. But I'm sure in making those videos, they told, you know, whatever marketing firm they've hired or whoever, you know, maybe they have a full-time marketing department. They said, you know, make us some videos that will appeal to the hunting crowd and the working crowd. We want to be the working man's knife. And so they made these kind of videos where no one actually uses the knife, which is kind of interesting. But um, I do, having said that, you know, I don't love their marketing videos, but I do get what they're trying to do, guys. Look, we at the knife community, we get upset whenever a knife company doesn't cater to us, and I get it because we have very strong taste and we do know what we're looking for in many cases, and so we just want companies to do what we say. All right. I get it. I want companies to do what I say. And I have yet to receive a call from Zero Tolerance about anything that they're making. I keep waiting, but they haven't called yet. So because of that, sometimes I'm a little disappointed with what they come out with, and I know so are you. But they're really, you know, look, if they want to sell a lot of knives, there's not enough of us. They need to sell them to the regular Joe who's walking into Bass Pro or Cabela's to buy a folding knife. And, you know, somehow you've got to convince that guy to pay, you know, $200 or $300 when there's a Kershaw or a CRKT sitting there for $25. All right. So look, it's a challenge and they've got to reach those people if they want to sell a lot of knives, which I'm sure that they do. All right. Now these days they've dropped the built like a tank moniker. Now the box says, I'll show you the 0300 box here, 308 box, sorry, experience it. Experience, I don't know, zero tolerance experience. I don't, it means nothing really. I guess they're trying to say, you know, these are knives you can use and depend on, but there's got to be a better way to say it. Anyway, um, I do think, yeah, they long since kind of moved away from the whole built like a tank stuff that started them off with the 0303. This is a 303 here, but I think of it as a 0300 series knife. Um, anyway, I see why they wanted to get rid of the built like a tank thing. Um, and I see why they're wanting to reach outside of the knife community. That said, I do think that companies would do well. I've got to have a little side talk here, and this is one of the subjects I wanted to speak to, and I'd love to have you guys weigh in as well. I do think that all the internet knife community wants are well-made knives. All right, and so you know, there's some credibility there, and I think it's worthwhile for any company to listen, you know, and if a bunch of people in the knife community are saying, hey, your blades are ground too thick, or you know your handles aren't comfortable, or your pocket clip consistently is a problem, you know, I don't think they're telling you that just to be jerks. I think they're telling you, hey, you know, I want to love this, I want to use it for the things that I need it for, but it's missing meeting my needs in some way. And so, and that doesn't just apply to ZT. I think it applies to a number of companies, but I don't think the internet knife community like has it out for any knife company. I think they just want really good stuff. And so we nitpick to make it as good as it can possibly be. And certainly as a reviewer, I've done my fair share of nitpicking. That said, I've got to stop here just for a second, guys. I know this is going to be a long video, but I want to give you sort of a list of some really great zero tolerance knives. And I know, you know, certainly these ones on the table, the 0308, I like this knife an awful lot. The 0920, again, great knife. This one, of course, is not stock. This is a 0640 with sharp dress knives, scales, and an MXG clip. This, of course, is a 0303. And I like all of these knives. And if they're suited to you, like these two are definitely on the bigger side and not for everybody. These two are probably a little more broadly appealing. But beyond that, there's some great zero tolerance knives. The 0562, which is very similar to the XM18 and not going to cost you nearly as much. It's fantastic. The 0630, a fantastic Emerson. I don't like the 620. That Tanto blade just doesn't do it for me, but the 630 is beautiful and functional and just wonderful. All right. The 0470 is smaller. There's a bunch of smaller ones, but the 0470 is my favorite of the smallish knives. The 0909, which is the Les George, same designer as this, but it's going to be G10 with a liner lock and cost considerably less. The 0350, we've already got a 300 on the table. How about the 0392? I was so crazily excited about that. You guys have no idea. And I did own one for a while, and the blade grind was pretty thick on that knife, and it ultimately didn't stay in my collection, but it was such a cool knife. And I worked out a deal with a fellow Canadian knife enthusiast who back then I didn't know, but now I actually interacted with him in a Facebook group, Canadian Knife and Gear, quite a bit. It's funny that, we knew each other way before. And one time someone asked me, is this guy any good? And I'm like, dude, I've been doing business with this guy before there even was a Canadian Knife and Gear. Back to my list. The 0393 I think is phenomenal. Really, really great knife. So there's lots of awesome zero tolerance models. I've tried to roll pictures in there of most of them. I know I was talking fast, so my words and the pictures might not line up exactly, but I wanted to at least let you see everything that I was talking about. And so, I think where ZT really shines, given all these models, that they can make a good knife. They definitely make something that's above and beyond the average, right? This is not the average old, I just want a knife to cut stuff. This is a knife that gives you really, really high degree of quality and a huge amount of pride of ownership. Really, really cool design from makers that we're all fans of. ZT really does a great job in that area, right? Again, here's a great example of just a phenomenal knife that anyone would be lucky to own and would do just about anything you needed a knife to do. It really would. Okay, and so that's where ZT really shines. They offer good, useful knives, but also an extra level of pride and visual interest because they have great designs and mostly great designs partnered with makers that we all like and appreciate. So when I think about that, what about the next ZTs? What about the current ZTs? And I have to say, I hope as they go forward, we see them continue with the collaborations. That's something that, I don't think, what was last year? There were a couple interesting knives last year. Well, this one, obviously, but this is an in-house design. This year, again, it looks like mostly in-house stuff. I hope that they'll get back to some collaborations. Now, I do need to say, I bet you those collaborations are a lot tougher to work out these days, right? Now there are so many OEMs, right? If you're a maker and you want to put your knife into production, Riot is a great example. What about We Knives? We Knives does a killer job and comes in at a very attractive price point. Best Tech, Concept, Kaiser, there's all these other companies now that if you have a great knife design that everybody wants, good luck, ZT, trying to lure those names to work with you and nobody else. And I do think when ZT does this, I do think they try to have some kind of arrangement in place where everybody is not doing Les George right now, right? It's the only place that you can go. And that, again, that's a real challenge. Not only that, but in addition to, the collaborations, you can just take your knife design, right? If you're, Boost Blades, or if you're Brian Nadeau or Ramon Chavez, you can just take your phenomenal, highly sought after design, get some Chinese OEM to make it for you, bring it back and sell it under your own name. So again, there are so many options when it comes to makers collaborating to deliver production versions of their knives that's a really, really tough go. The other thing that's going to be really, really tough is that ZT, when it comes to high-end production, there weren't that many options, right? There was Hinderer, who was really doing just his own thing, and he still is and does a great job. I love Hinderer knives. But Hinder is not going to other makers and making their designs. Chris Reeve knives. I had a Chris Reeve here, but I don't know what I did with it. But Chris Reeve, again, certainly high-end production, much more expensive than your average ZT. But Chris Reeve is not enticing other makers to come and have them build their knives. All right. Um, if you ZT was really the only game in town. If you wanted a high-end example of a design that you loved from your favorite maker, it was ZT or nothing. Well, that is no longer the case. Really, if you just wanted an extremely well-made limited production knife, again, ZT was like the only option. There weren't a lot of places you could go for a really well put together Les George design. Okay, I guess the Talos was probably out before this, but again, you're looking at $400 or $500 for a Talos. Now, you can. There are a lot of great high-end knives that are fairly competitive with ZT. I would say, ZT is like a step above your average Bestech or Kaiser or Concept, although that's probably, I'd hesitate to say that with confidence. Step below maybe We Knives and Riot. Uh, so there's a lot of competition. And if you want a high-end, well put together collaboration, a great example of your favorite designers, premier model, you can go a lot of different places now, and that has got to um, put a kink in Zero Tolerance's game. All right, now for this year we've got the 0762, we've got the 0990, and we've got another version. So let me move these out of the way. So we've got the 0308, only it's going to be done in this configuration. So black G10 and the tiger striped on the blade. It's okay. I don't like tiger stripe blades. I don't like coated blades, period. I try to avoid coated blades. So that one's not for me, but I do like the 308 and I'm pretty pleased with it. So if you are watching this and you like this configuration, if you go, man, Kevin, I hate the look of this, but I love the look of this. Well, of course, go. Justin, I think, has some of these in stock right now. So I'll give him a second plug there. Go check one out. The other stuff, it just doesn't get me as excited. The 0762 and the 0909, they're okay, but I don't get that same sense that I used to get from ZT, where I was like, just couldn't wait to get my hands on the newest thing. Um, I don't think that's going to be permanent. I'm sure that next year and the year after, they'll have stuff coming out that I'm really excited to check out and that I just can't wait to get my hands on and that I can't wait to share with you guys. At least I hope that's what happened. That's what happens. And that kind of makes me think, has ZT jumped the shark? No, I don't really think so yet, right? Have they lost a certain portion of their sort of favored position in the eyes of the community? I think to a degree, yes, they have. There are just more options out there. There are more distractions that we have to consider for our knife buying dollars. All right. So I will say, though, people are still paying attention. The fact that I'm making this video, the fact that I know pretty much off the top of my head about the 3 ZT models for this year. Like, I didn't have to go and do research. I know which 3 ZTs are coming out. That I think says something. I couldn't tell you 2 Bestech models. I couldn't tell you 2 Spyderco models that are coming out that I'm super stoked about, but I can tell you the ZTs. So they do still get a lot of attention and a lot of love from the community. And I think that means that if they just deliver some awesome stuff, if they can put out some models that really get people excited, they're going to fly off the shelves and everyone's going to want one and all the reviewers are going to be praising it. And, I think it can be right back to the way it was back when the 0560 came out and it's all everybody was talking about. The knife community, yeah, they have changed. ZT has changed, and they're continuing to change. Some of the recent stuff, slip joints that you never thought would come out of Zero Tolerance. All right. And I do look forward to the time that I can drool over some ZTs the way that I used to with the 0300 and the 0560. I hope that they haven't sort of completely lost the plot and just kind of go off and do weird things that they think will sell to non-knife people and leave the community behind. That's where I think they would really mess up, because the community has supported zero tolerance for a long time. And frankly, people who are not that into knives are probably not spending $300 on a titanium frame lock. They just aren't. And so, I think a good portion of sales are going to come from the internet knife community. And I think ZT kind of depends on that. And I also think that the pushback from the community ought to be given some consideration, and perhaps some steps could be taken to build a better relationship with the knife community. All right. So there you go, guys. Those are my thoughts on zero tolerance. I'm still a fan. I enjoy a lot of these knives. I love a lot of their models and have and will continue to recommend a lot of them from the past. All right, there are some that are discontinued that I kind of wish would carry on, and some that carried on that I wish would be discontinued. That just shows you I have no idea what actually sells well. I'd love to hear your comments down below. What are your stories about ZT? What are your favorite models? Let me know down in the comments. Agree or disagree with any of the points I've made. I would love to hear it all. Thanks again for watching. We'll talk to you soon.